Welcome to Education Forum. I'm Herman Badillo, Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the City University. The improvement of education affects all New Yorkers. This program will focus on the key educational issues and challenges before us all. My guests today are Joseph Reich and Dr. Carol Reich, who are the founders of the Beginning with Children Foundation and who have established a school in Brooklyn and are working on a second one now. But the interesting thing about them is that they've done this at the beginning of what we now call the charter school movement, because when they started all this in 1989, there were very few such schools available. Now, you come from Chicago, Dr.
Yes.
Reich, and you are from Pennsylvania. How did you happen to first of all, end up working together, and secondly, end up setting up a school in Brooklyn?
Well, we met on a blind date at Cornell 47 years ago and settled in New York after I was in the military and have been here since 1961.
And New York has been very, very good to us, and we thought we should try and return the favor.
You were a graduate of the City University, a PhD from the City University of New York, right?
I am.
Okay. Now, how did you set up this foundation in 1989? What happened? What inspired you to do this?
We had adopted an I Have a Dream class, and I had learned at the City University that the first 7 years of a child's life are very important. I think St. Augustine said it first, but they said it again. And our kids were being badly cheated. We got them in 7th grade. They were largely Latino and black children.
And it's in Williamsburg, right?
In Williamsburg. And they were being cheated of what we think is a basic civil right. They were not getting a good education. And it was too late. We argued about it. That's how we ended up working together. Joe said, I want a bottom line. I want a bottom line every day. And I kept saying, you don't get it every day. And it's going to be very hard to turn this around if we don't start earlier. And it turned out that that was right. Though none of our kids is dead, and only 2 have ended up in jail. These are the dreamers. And some now work with us back in the community, which I think is really important.
Now, tell us about the school that you have, the first one that you started. What grades does it cover, and how many students did you have, and how many do you have now?
Well, our idea was, as Carol pointed out, that we had gotten our I Have a Dream kids when they were in the 7th grade, and that was too late. So we started with kindergarten in the 1st grade, the first year, and we were fortunate enough to get a building from the Pfizer Corporation in Williamsburg. And we've added 50 children a year. We now have children from pre-K through the 8th grade, 450 kids, and our second school opened in September.
Let's go back to the first one, the 450 kids. What is their ethnic breakdown?
62, it fluctuates, between 60 and 62% Latino, 30% black. The others are white, and I've seen some Asians recently. There were no Asians there before. The white tend to be children of the middle class.
And what is the record of their performance, would you say?
It's fantastic.
Well, tell us about it. Tell us about it.
Well, one thing I should say at the beginning is you mentioned the charter school model. There was no such word when we started, but a lot of the principles which have been in the charter movement have been incorporated in our school. So we take children by lottery. There's no competitive exam. We have no idea what their abilities are when we accept them. And so that's a prelude to the achievement that they've accomplished. We've well exceeded the city averages in reading and math, and 3 years ago we were awarded an award by the mayor, literacy award for the most improved elementary school in New York City.
Well, see, that's the problem, that I pick up the newspapers every day practically, and it says that students in New York City, especially Latino and African American kids, in areas like Williamsburg, where you are not achieving, and that there's a terrible fear on the part of the Chancellor and the Commissioner of Education that they will not be able to get a high school diploma because they're not learning in the early grades. And yet you have been able to do it with basically whatever resources you could put together. What lesson can you give to Chancellor Levy now and to other people who are thinking of starting charter schools?
Well, let me back up and say the Board of Ed let us do what we decided we wanted to do as a model. And we test all our kids after entry, because it's a public school, you can't test them before. And we find a nice, beautiful bell curve of abilities. And so the words all children can learn are absolutely true. All children can learn. We don't think they can all learn the same way, but they can all learn.
Well, what is the difference in what you do in the school? Do you have longer hours? Do you have different, are you teachers, members of the UFT?
Our teachers are UFT teachers, but our largest single budget item from the beginning was a full-time staff developer.
We work very hard with the teachers to help them do a better job. The testing and measurement that we do, which was originally not well accepted by the teachers, they now see it as an aid to helping them do a good job with the children. And the other thing we do, Herman, which I think will get a good reception from you, is we have very high expectations for the children. We don't believe or buy into the idea that because of some of the problems they start out with in school that they cannot learn. And so we expect them to learn.
In other words, you don't have social promotion, right?
No, sir.
You never had it?
No.
Okay. Do you think that that makes a significant difference?
Yes, I do. But I think the atmosphere where it's a belief system that all children can achieve, special ed kids included. We have between 18 and 20% special ed kids, and I'm not sure why. I think the parents sometimes select these new schools deliberately, so you get an overproportion in the lottery. But they all do well. That's what's important. You expect them to do well.
Well, our school is a community, too. One of the things that struck me when we did our I Have a Dream class was that the parents, especially, that was about 90% Latino, felt that they could not go inside the doors of the school. They were only there if a child was in trouble and they were summoned. We have the exact opposite attitude. We want the parents to be partners in the education process, and they are. So we have what we think is a school community. And I think it's hard when you're running 1,100 schools to do that, especially if you're trying to do it from a central locations. So I wouldn't deign to advise Chancellor Levy on how he should run the system, but it seems to us that the individual school unit has to be good, and that's how you build a good school system. There are very few things you can do centrally that are going to make good schools.
But I do think fear is a contagion, and if you believe that they can do it, and you help teachers to achieve that. The union has supported us since from before the beginning. If you can help teachers achieve this, as you raise the bar, you have to raise the bar on their training. I think that's really important.
But you don't have a bureaucracy over you, right? I mean, you're not responsible to the community superintendent?
No.
Or you're not responsible to the chancellor either?
Oh, we are
responsible to the chancellor, but not to the district.
Yeah,
we are in no district.
But you're not supervised in the sense that the chancellor's district supervises special education or high schools, right?
No. We were designated New York's demonstration elementary school about 6 years ago, and we never quite figured out what it meant, but we have had the freedom to use our foundation and its resources to guide the development of the school, much like what a charter school is.
Well, do you have more resources than the average school? Is there more money available?
Yes, we've been able to raise money from foundations in New York City who care about improving education, and from individuals from largely from the financial community who are also concerned about getting well-educated people to work.
Well,
but it's not large sums of money.
All right, and what about the other issue that the teachers union talks about, class size? What is the average class size?
We wanted 20. The demand was, and they succeeded in getting this done, that we have 25. So the results that we're telling you about are done with 25 children, one teacher, sometimes an aide. But we've also been very lucky in that Cornell has sent interns down who are supervised and trained. So we have university interns in the school too.
Well, that's a big advantage because my wife teaches the 7th grade in Wagner Middle School, and she has 37 kids in the class.
too many.
That's too many, right? And she has 4 classes, so that's a huge problem.
I should get her to come to our school,
Yeah.
Herman.
I don't know what
I'd like to get all the schools to get down to what you have.
Down to 25.
Yeah, right.
I know that you can do it very well at 10, and you can do it at 15. Then you start getting into some gray area, and for some reason I believe that 25 is probably maxed out.
Well, it's not likely we're going to be able to do that very shortly, is it?
No, there are not enough buildings.
And then there's not enough money. That's what the mayor's office says. Or do you think that that's not a problem?
Well,
Go ahead.
We interrupt ourselves.
That's all right.
We think there's a lot of excuses being thrown out as to why this problem isn't being dealt with. But what we have learned is it is possible with some focus and dedication and high standards to make a school work. And one of the disappointing things to me coming from the private sector is that in the private sector, if something works, people copy it, emulate it, try and spread it. This hasn't happened in education in New York City, and people are not coming and saying, well, will you take this to another place? Can you do it again? It's the education world doesn't seem to encourage that kind of thing, and I don't know why it is.
In this city they don't say it, but we go all around the country. I think we're education brokers. Joe's not really too happy with that expression. Describing this and helping people start schools, but it hasn't happened in New York.
Well, you've started to duplicate it because you started another school, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, I want you to tell us about that, but first we have some announcements.
In Salisbury, Maryland, the hungry are being fed. In Wind Falls, Indiana, a man who learned to read at 47 is making sure others learn earlier. Every day, someone in America is doing something to light up another life. But there is so much more to do. The light to do it is within us all. We only need to share it.
Go for a mouthful, go for the fun.
Go for cake!
Cakes for everyone. Just one stack is what it takes. And it's Gopher cakes. Open wide, stuff your face. There's always room for more Gopher cakes. Empty the box, they're reload. Eat those Gopher cakes till you explode.
Exercised lately?
Till you explode.
We're back today with Joseph and Carol Rich, who are the founders of the Beginning with Children Foundation. Now, you already have one school that is moving along very well, and you just got approval for a charter school. Now, tell us about that. Where is it, and what grades does it cover?
It's in Fort Greene, and what happened when the charter law passed, like, lots of parental groups came to us, and we went through them all and picked this one, which seemed to be largely middle class, people of various colors and persuasions, and they were very hardworking.
Like what? Give us what is the general ethnic breakdown of this school.
It's largely black, and
But they're
some
middle
white,
class.
but they're middle class.
Well, it's a mixture.
But the parental group that planned it was largely middle class. What we've gotten is an extension that we never got in the other class, which is an economic range. But they are still all children of color.
And what grades do you hope to cover here?
Same thing.
Through the 8th grade.
What we're trying to do is take the same model that we were talking about before and see what's transportable, because populations fluctuate and children's ability fluctuates, and we want to know what's transportable in what we did and what is not.
But now, this is a charter school, so you're not responsible to the chancellor here, right?
No.
No, we did it through the State University of New York. That was another thing we wanted to do, which was there are 2 ways to get a charter in New York. One through the State University for a new school, or through the Board of Education and the Board of Regents. And Chancellor Crew asked us to convert our first school to a charter school, and we plan to do that. We'd hope to do it this fall. We're going to do it next fall. And we wanted to set one up under the new charter law through the State University so we could see which organization would provide us with the better services.
Well, but there was something else. We also wanted a few something else's. Wanted to take a look at what kinds of governance were applicable in both places. The governance in one school is very different from the other school, even if they both end up charter schools, because we're responsible to different agencies.
Well, the state legislature approved 100 charter schools a couple of years ago in New York State, right?
Right.
50 to be approved by the Board of Regents and 50 by the state university. How come that so few schools have been approved in the period of time?
Did you ever see one of these applications?
Yes, I have. Yes.
It makes the New York City phone book look small. And then there are addenda, which are the size of Queens. And it's an arduous thing to submit these things. I think it's not fair to think that parental groups can do this alone. There need to be support agencies to help local community groups write a charter. It's hard to do.
Well, and let's be honest, the bill got passed through some suasion in the state legislature. There's not a lot of support politically in the city or in the state for charter schools, and that's something that we've come to realize in the last couple of years, that we've got to be more active beyond our school or our two schools to see that this movement gains and grows in New York.
But in terms of alternatives to the regular school system, seems to me that charter schools are the only ones that have any kind of green light, because you can't even talk about vouchers without being
That's
attacked
a dirty
by
word. No,
from
you
on
can't
both
do that.
sides. So at least charter schools, even if it's 100, have been approved, and at least the UFT is in favor of charter schools. So it seems to me, from a practical point of view, and I like to talk about practical things that can be done, that charter schools are the way to go, and it's important. That's why I wanted to talk with you, that we get more people applying for charter schools.
Well, I think that what's needed, and that's the way it's beginning to look to us, is that you need the community knowledge. We're going to have to go out, not us, but members of the community, into the community, and tell people what they're entitled to and how they can achieve a charter, and that it's not impossible. I think the support has to come from the grassroots. That's exactly the way we did the first school. We've been in the community for years before we tried to do it. I don't think this top-down thing works so well.
And there's a big problem with real estate in New York City. It is very hard to find a place to put a new school, and it's very expensive, and it's not well funded. There's no funding for real estate. There's no funding for startup. The big opportunity, Herman, is to take existing school buildings and convert them to charter. And that will require a political support, both in the communities and in the state, which doesn't exist right now. And it's our job, if we care about this, to help build it. And that's one of the things we're going to be working on over the next few years.
Yeah, because it seems to me that you've proven, and a few other groups, very small, unfortunately, have proven that it is possible to teach children, whatever background they come from and whatever difficulties they have in their family life, or however low their economic standards may be, but we still have almost 100 schools in New York City which have been under Regents' review for many years, and nothing happens.
That's generation after generation lost to systems like the City University system.
And it's going to make your job a lot tougher here at City University, because the raw material that you're getting.
No, I wish we could go back to at the City University at the beginning and work with the kids when they're in first grade. But unfortunately, so far, we've only gotten permission to go into the 9th grade, which is a great deal of progress.
Well, maybe we should start a charter school with City University.
No, yeah, no, really, I would support that, because what I've been talking about for years and still have not been able to get off the ground is an educational park where we have begin with the kids in kindergarten, go all the way up through graduate school to see if that works. So I certainly would welcome it. But here's another issue that comes up all the time, and especially now where there's a lot of debate about it, and that's bilingual education. Going back to your first school in Williamsburg, how do you handle the problem of bilingual education?
If a child comes in with Spanish as his or her first language.
Which I guess a lot of them do, right?
No, they don't.
We don't have that
We don't
many.
seem to have that many first-generation arrivals. The school does two things. There are not that many first-generation arrivals, and it seems to cut down on transiency. So once we get a family, the family tends to stay there, almost always. They bring them in from Queens sometimes. I don't know if that's legal. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but
No, it's
they
okay.
do.
Because now you have school choice.
School choice around the city.
They can come in. They come in
Yeah.
from Queens if they've moved, and the child goes into a class where it's taught primarily in Spanish, and then switched into English. And we have a Spanish club where the English speakers take Spanish, and now the Spanish speakers want to belong to the Spanish club. That's okay too. There's recognition of the culture, but it's taught in English.
Okay, you start in Spanish, and then how long does it take before you go into English? And do you go into English completely or slowly?
Slowly. I would say with a very young child, 4 months.
And then within the end of the school
At the end
year?
of the school year, they're English speakers.
And you find that that works?
Yes.
Because as you know, the debate going on in bilingual education now is that it takes many years. And in fact, in Williamsburg, you may remember an article that was written by Jim Trout in New York
Yes.
Magazine about a few months ago that said that in Williamsburg, where you are, there are kids who have been in bilingual education for up to 8 years, and they still cannot speak English properly.
A lot of that is based on their surname, not their ability. And what I go back to what Joe said before, we test them, either in Spanish or in English, what their abilities are and teach them according to their abilities. It's kind of a very simple system.
Okay, and you find that it works?
Yes.
And I think it's working nationally. It's certainly worked in California when they changed the laws. And it's unfair to children who come in speaking Spanish to keep them excluded from the major culture and the language of this country. So.
Well, I've supported bilingual education in Congress, but the idea was to have it transitional in nature, not to go on year after year, as it apparently does in many of the schools in New York City.
Do you remember 7th grade, where kids would get into 7th grade and just stay there? It's like that. I think the children stagnate, the teachers stagnate, and it just doesn't help them.
Okay, now, in your second school, do you have any special programs that you want to establish there?
Yes, because as I said before, reasons that we don't understand, the special ed population fluctuates. It's not a straight curve, it's like a sine wave, so you never know what you're getting.
Now, when you talk of special ed, tell the people who are watching, what are the specific problems that the children have in special ed?
Well, they can be a range of problems of learning. And one of the other issues in special ed is because it is so much more heavily funded, there's been a tendency to classify more and more children as special ed children because more funds go along with it.
You get more per head. But
so this has become a very politicized issue, too.
Let me go back to his first question. I think this is also a highly politicized area in education. And it's largely behavioral. What you usually see is something behavioral. And it may just be cultural. Maybe the child has to learn the culture of a classroom.
Yeah, but that's not what we meant in Congress when we passed the
It isn't what you
Children with
meant.
Disabilities Bill in 1977.
No,
that's
it is
my
not.
point.
It is
That-
not what was
that it's
meant by
become
94,
behavioral.
142.
It was supposed to be some specific
It has
problem.
become behavioral. Sometimes it is specific problems. Sometimes we have children who have been damaged by crack, children who have been damaged by cocaine, but you can't test to find that out. You're lucky if the parent admits to it at all. So what's neurological damage and what's behavioral damage sometimes look exactly the same.
Now, in your charter school, you don't get any additional monies for special ed.
You get some additional
Some,
monies, but the
not-
charter schools are underfunded on the basic money. They don't get startup money, they don't get real estate money, and they get shortchanged on special ed. So we have a long way to go before we have one arm tied behind our back trying to do a charter school.
But it's easier in a way because we had the first school. We have a SPED team in the first school that comes from Columbia. And so we're loaning them to the second school because I know that we have at least 20% SPED kids in the second school.
Well, you may have one arm tied behind your back, but you're doing very well, so keep it up, and thanks for being with us today.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
You can reach us by email at our website, www.cuny.tv, or write to us at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016.